The knock on her door came at dawn, sharp and commanding, the kind that rattles the heart before it reaches the ears. When Aisha wiped the sleep from her eyes and opened the door of her small rented apartment, she did not see a delivery man or a neighbor in need. She saw uniforms, pressed, decorated, immovable. 20 Marine generals stood in silent formation in the narrow hallway, medals catching the early light. For one terrifying second, her mind raced. What did I do wrong? But the man at the front removed his cap, placed his hand over his heart, and said words she would never forget. We've come to thank you for saving one of our own. Just weeks earlier, Aisha was only a young nurse trying to survive the long nights and short paychecks of a public hospital. She was 24, new to the city, living alone, sending most of her salary back home to her parents. Her days blurred together, medication rounds, emergency calls, the quiet grief of families in waiting rooms. It was on one of those mornings, exhausted after a night shift, that she noticed the old man sitting alone on a bench outside a run-down apartment building across from her bus stop. He was thin, hunched, wrapped in the same worn coat every day. What struck her wasn't just his age, it was the way he stared at the ground, as if he had forgotten how to ask the world for anything. The first time, she almost walked past him. She was tired, hungry, late. But something made her stop. She bought an extra paratha and tea from a street vendor and placed it gently beside him. He looked up, startled, eyes sharp despite the wrinkles. You don't have to, he said quietly. She smiled. I want to. That was all. No questions, no stories. Just breakfast shared in silence. The next day, she brought food again. And the next. Soon, it became routine. Every morning after her shift, she brought him breakfast, sometimes eggs, sometimes bread, sometimes just hot tea. His name, she learned, was Mr. Kareem. He lived alone. He never complained, never begged. He always thanked her like it was a gift far greater than food. Slowly, he began to talk. About the sea, about discipline, about loyalty, about loss. He never spoke of his past directly, but there was weight in his words, the kind carried by people who had lived many lives inside one. One rainy morning, she found his bench empty. Panic tightened her chest. She searched nearby streets until she saw an ambulance outside his building. Inside, she found him unconscious, fever burning, breathing shallow. The doctors said he had severe pneumonia, worsened by malnutrition and neglect. No family had come, no emergency contact. When asked who she was, Aisha hesitated, then said, I'm a friend. And she stayed. She stayed through her days off, through double shifts, through nights spent on hard waiting room chairs. She argued with administrators when they tried to discharge him early. She paid for medicine when the hospital supply ran short. When he woke, weak and confused, the first thing he saw was her asleep beside his bed, her head resting on her folded arms. His eyes filled with tears he didn't wipe away. One evening, he asked her why she did all this. She told him the truth. Because one day, she said softly, I hope someone will be kind to my father when I can't be there. He nodded, as if that answer settled something deep inside him. Mr. Kareem recovered slowly. On the day of his discharge, he asked Aisha for a favor. If anything happens to me, he said, handing her a sealed envelope, give this to the address written on it. She tried to refuse, but his voice carried an authority she couldn't explain. She took it. 2 weeks later, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. Aisha attended the funeral alone. No relatives came, just a simple grave, a quiet prayer, and a nurse who cried harder than she expected. That night, remembering the envelope, she finally opened it. Inside was a letter, and a list of names, ranks, and an insignia she recognized from history books. Mr. Kareem had been a founding Marine general, a war hero who had quietly faded into anonymity after outliving his family and friends. The letter did not speak of medals or battles. It spoke of her kindness, of breakfasts and tea, of dignity restored. She mailed the letter, unsure what would happen. And now, here they were. The generals filled her tiny apartment, refusing to sit until she did. They told her stories of the man she had known only as a lonely old soul. A leader who had saved hundreds. A mentor who had shaped generations. A legend who, in his final months, had written only one name in his personal record, Aisha, the nurse who remembered I was human. They presented her with an honor rarely given to civilians. They offered support, scholarships, a future she had never dared imagine. But what shook her most was not the recognition, it was the respect in their eyes. When they left, the hallway felt impossibly quiet. Aisha went to work that night like always. Same uniform, same tired feet, but something inside her had changed. She understood now that kindness does not need an audience, and that the smallest acts, breakfast, time, presence, can echo louder than medals. Somewhere, a generation of Marines stood taller because of the man she fed. And somewhere, unseen, his spirit rested, knowing that in his final chapter, he had been loved not for who he was, but simply because he was.